You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to more of the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today on this beautiful June 20th, 2022, we are talking our final USFL power rankings of the regular season, capping off the first season of the returning USFL. I cannot believe we're here. It does not feel that long ago that we were discussing a potential maybe stop or roadblock in the season actually happening with a lawsuit that kind of broke out and did not really amount to anything significant. I've got to say, it has been an absolute blast covering the USFL with you guys. I feel like a very large portion of my following recently has come in from the USFL, and it's awesome to see that I have found a little family inside the USFL here. You guys have been awesome to talk to all season long, whether it's from the picks to the power rankings, and it'll be fun to see how the USFL handles their offseason. And we kind of get to cover stuff as we roll through the offseason portion of the USFL. But for now, let's wrap up our final week of power rankings. We got 8 teams to put in order from worst to first. Comment down below who you think sits at the bottom and who sits at the very top and everyone in between. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's talk some USFL, shall we? Now, if you're somebody who's been watching these power rankings all season long, you know where we're kind of at with the power rankings here. If you watched my power rankings last week, I'll tell you right now, nothing has changed. It is the same exact order as it was last week. So a spoiler early for some of you guys, if you want to just stick around and watch through the whole thing and kind of leave your comments and thoughts anyways, I'll kind of explain my reasoning for why. Make sure you stick around for that. But if you're new here, let's talk the order of my final rankings for the regular season. At number 8, we have the Pittsburgh Maulers, who I don't think anyone would really argue with this one here. They are the bottom team in the USFL, and I don't really think that there's much of an argument for that. I think that when you look at just the body of work that they put together throughout the entirety of the season, not very good, not very competitive. I don't really blame the players as much as I do the coaching staff. I think it's more on the coaching staff than anything else. If there's one thing that kind of sums up the way I felt about this coaching staff and the job they were doing, if you were watching the broadcast of the Pittsburgh Maulers and Michigan Panthers game, at halftime, as they were going to commercial, Kirby Wilson was in the background as the commentators were talking, screaming at the team, shouting, "Enough is enough," and talking about what you should be doing. And there was even a couple points on the sidelines where he's like shouting at players, telling them to do their job and everything. And again, I don't want to blame the coaching staff entirely. I don't blame the players as much as the coaching staff, but there is some of it on the players that it does fall on them. But you just see him shouting at the team and everything, and they're just all kind of sitting there dejected and tired. I mean, if you're having conversations like that in week 10 of the final week of the season, you've kind of lost the ship at this point. And just what a disastrous season it has been for the Maulers. That's all I've really got to say about them. They have been my bottom team now for quite some time, and I don't really think anyone would argue the Maulers above any other team at this point with the season being over. Coming in at number 7, we are looking at the Michigan Panthers, who locked up the first overall selection and the first pick of every single round in the USFL draft going into the 2023 draft for the USFL. With that conversation, really excited because we're at a point right now where the season's wrapping up. This is the first time since 2001 in the XFL that a spring football league has completed an entire season from start to finish like this. And, it's been a beauty to watch, and to know that there's more to come is just so exciting. And for the Michigan Panthers, hats off to them for doing, what they did and getting to lock up that opportunity. I think that's a really fun thing that the USFL got to do here, and something I wouldn't mind seeing maybe the NFL implement into their own kind of scheduling. And I don't mean to sidetrack the Panthers, here and talking about them, but I would like to see the NFL adopt something where, let's say the top 24 teams pick in order from 1 to 24, but then those bottom 8 teams from 32 to 25, they're playing for that first overall pick. Like, the first overall selection should go to team 25, because then it gives you a little bit more of a competitive product at the bottom of the rankings in the league and in the standings there. That is something I'm curious to see how that would affect. Let me know if you guys are interested in seeing something like that with the NFL, because I almost feel like that would help kind of circumvent teams from just kind of tanking their way to trying to get a really good player or really good players in general to have really good draft picks. Something that I just find a little bit interesting the USFL got to do, but hats off to the Panthers for getting that win and locking up that Tough season for them. Quarterback issues throughout the entirety of the year. They drafted Shea Patterson that everyone was really excited about, myself included, and that just did not work out really well. It's unfortunate that Paxton Lynch was hurt all season because I feel like Paxton Lynch, the way he led the team this past week, if he had the opportunity to be a starter for a longer period and not get hurt immediately upon his first opportunity, things could have looked a little bit different for this Panthers team, and maybe they could have won some of those tight games they wound up losing. But, at 2-7, and arguably this team could have been easily, maybe 4-6, 5-5, had a couple of balls bounce their way. Hats off to them. This is a Jeff Fisher team through and through where, they were 2-8, not 2-7. Yeah, they were 2-8, but this is a team that they looked the part of a 5-5 Jeff Fisher coach team. Coming in at number 6, we're looking at the Houston Gamblers, and hats off to them for, finishing off the season, back-to-back wins. They took down the Stallions and they took down the Breakers, the 2 South Division representatives in the USFL playoffs. Talk about a team that was just better than their record, and, having lost 4 games within the last 15 seconds of regulation. This is a team that could have very well been, 7-3 and fighting for a playoff spot right now. They could have potentially knocked the Breakers out of the playoffs had things gone better for them on the offensive side of the ball. This was one of the most aggressive and just downright nasty defenses I've seen. And, they could force the turnovers. They made the stops when they needed the stops. It was just not having an offense to really back them up and help them through games. And, Kenji Bahar looked good last week. This week was kind of meh. The offense did not really do too much, but it's just... It's incredible to see such a good defense sitting on the sidelines, because I am a guy that, firmly believes in the whole adage of defense wins championships, and to see a defense that good for, leading the league in turnovers. And, having guys like Isaiah Likely and Chris Odom and, Donald Payne and just the turnover machines, the sack machines, the pure tacklers, and just how good that defense was. It's unfortunate that they're sitting on the sideline and not going to be playing next weekend, but hats off to them. They finished the year off 3-7, got a big couple of wins and some momentum to build off for next year. Love what the Gamblers did. I love how aggressive that defense was. That coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball needs to be retained because they got the absolute most out of that side of the football there. And hats off to Mark Thompson, who finished off the season as well. I wish that his season did not kind of get derailed there by injury, but I do want to make sure he gets some love as well, because he was a fun little story to watch when he was completely mauling defenses during the middle portion to early portion of the season. Then at number 5, we are looking at the Tampa Bay Bandits. Just a team that had all the stock put into them early on and did not pan out. Everyone was discussing the big name schools that their players were coming from, and the proven ability of them, having a bunch of players having played in the pros and whatnot. And, to go 5-5, I think is what they finished the season off at. 5-5. 4-6. They finished off 4-6. Not the season you would have expected for a team that, just was praised so highly. And even the betting odds were really, looked at them as one of the best teams in the league. It was a very interesting year, to say the least. Jordan Teamu, kind of a roller coaster season for him. He had some really good games, some really bad games. It felt very 50-50 at times with him. It was a very interesting thing to watch there. The offense just didn't quite have the gas to keep up with some of the best teams, and the defense just really struggled to keep up with some of those more athletic offenses, and it showed. They were built on size and being a bigger team, and some of those just quicker and speedier teams were just a nightmare of a problem for them. But sitting at number 5, they cap out the bottom half. Let's see what they do going into the offseason. I'm really excited to see how the USFL offseason looks, because I know obviously the NFL will be going on during that same time period, but I will obviously be covering it. I'm excited to see kind of how the USFL handles their offseason time, and I'm definitely curious to see how the Tampa Bay Bandits can build on what they have so far and try to get into the position that everyone thought they would be in starting at the beginning of the year. Now, coming in at number 4, we look at the New Orleans Breakers. My favorite team, the team that I rooted for going throughout the entirety of the season, a team that definitely has some flaws and I'm a little bit worried about here, but they're in the playoffs. We'll have to see how things shake out for them going up against the Birmingham Stallions. This has been a team that, played very well, but has also played turning the ball over in some terrible situations here. Kyle Sloter has been dealing with an injury. He did not get the start this past week. I'm assuming because they wanted to give him rest for the week and let him get ready for their playoff game against the Stallions. They've got a tall task in front of them going up against a team that they lost to twice during the regular season. Do I think they can get the job done? Potentially. They're going to have to be at their healthiest and play at their very best against the Birmingham Stallions defense that has been a problem for them both times that they played, because both times those two teams went on against each other, the offense did not really show up against that Stallions defense there. But I like the Generals not the Generals. Wow, running names through my head here. I like the Breakers at number 4. If they play really well and the defense shows up, they have a shot. And the defense has been somewhat impressive depending on the week and when things are going on. There was a stretch there where they were having a really hard time getting to the quarterback, but the defense kind of found itself during the late run of the season. So we'll have to see if that defense can build off of that. I'm not going to knock them for losing to the Gamblers. They weren't starting a ton of players. This was really just kind of a let's get through this game and get ready for the playoffs type deal for them. I don't want to take away anything from the Gamblers for getting a win there, but at the same time, it was clear the Breakers were kind of looking forward to next week's game. Coming in at number 3, we are talking the Philadelphia Stars. And, I want to say it was about like 5-ish weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, I was pegging them as my dark horse team for the playoffs to make it all the way through. They've consistently had the best quarterback room from start to finish. And, people will say what they want about Kyle Sloter, and I'm a big Sloter guy. I'm a Breakers fan, obviously. But for them to go from Brian Scott, who was killing it before he got hurt, to Case Cookus, who kind of just picked up where Brian Scott left off, hats off to the Stars for drafting the way they did with their quarterback room. They did an excellent job picking 2 quarterbacks that I would say they got the absolute most out of compared to the other teams there. It did not matter. Excuse me. It did not matter who was underneath the center for them. Matt Colburn, clearly a running back 1 for this team. You have Bug Howard as well, who has been like a hybrid tight end, wide receiver, whatever you want to call him there. Mismatch problem clearly for some of the defenses that he's gone up against. I'm excited to see how this team fares. The defense needs to stiffen up just a little bit there. They offer up a ton of yards every single week defensively, and if there's anything that's going to be their undoing going up against the Generals, it's going to be that. They went down in a tough loss, 26-23. It was a playoff matchup preview, and I think that was an awesome thing to kind of have happen before we get the main event of them two going up against each other again this weekend. I'm excited to see it again, really looking forward to it, but the Stars have a shot. They just got to play cleaner defense, and the offense does what it needs to do. I'm not really worried about the Stars offense at all in this game. It's just a matter of can that defense stiffen up and shut down what the Generals do effectively, which is pound the rock. And also, at this point now, the Generals, with the way they're throwing the football, you need to make sure you can shut that down too. But the Generals love to control the ground game, and that's where the Stars really struggle defensively, and they need to make sure they lock that down. Coming in at number 2, if you have not been watching, this might be a little bit of a surprise for you. If you've been a fan of the show for a while now, you'll know that they've been here for a little bit. The Birmingham Stallions, the offense faltered for a little bit, culminating in their first loss of the season. They kind of picked things up this week, I will say that, 21-18 over the Tampa Bay Bandits. Good, solid win. Give yourself a little bit of momentum and kind of knock off the rattling that was that loss to the Gamblers last week. But there is a little bit of concern there. Jamar Smith has been up and down all season long, and he had a solid showing this past week, but you cannot ignore the up and down games that he's had. He's had multiple games where he was sub 50% completions and things did not really look good. So I'll say this. The Stallions defense, incredible. Love what they do on that side of the football. Literally the best. They're with the rest of they're among the best of them, I guess you could say, would be the wording I want to say there. But the offense for me is really going to boil down to, can Jamar Smith play 2 clean games and lead them to a championship for the USFL? He needs to play his 2 best games going up against the best competition these next couple of weeks here that he'll have going up against in a stretch of time. But do I think that they're going to make it to the championship? I would say they have a very good shot. Again, I'm a Breakers fan, but I'm also realistic. The Breakers have not beaten them. They lost to them twice. But I will say this. When it comes to football, hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. You see it in the NFL. division teams play each other. Sometimes a team will sweep another division rival twice, but both teams will make the playoffs, and it's tough to win that third game. You got to beat the same team for a third time now. It's a tall task. You've played each other twice. At this point, both teams should really know what the other does fairly well. The Breakers offense has struggled both times, and the Breakers were able to slow down the Stallions significantly in that second game. We have to see if the Breakers can really put it together and finally stop that offense and stop that defense, or plow through that defense, I guess you should say. But it'll be an interesting matchup. But I like the Stallions at number 2. And to cap things off, the Generals from New Jersey are going to represent for the North Division against the Philadelphia Stars, and I've got to say, man, this has been the most complete team from week 1 to week number 10. The Generals have been the best coached and just most consistent team with what they do. Controlling the ground game, some really good passing from both DeAndre Johnson and Luis Perez, excuse me. I've been saying his name wrong all season long, and I just realized that the other day. It's Luis Perez. But they do so many things well on offense, and then you look at like Cavante Turpin, man. Like, come on, dude. Like, the way he plays is just unbelievable, from special teams to the offensive side of the ball. It's ridiculous. And then like you got Darius Victor. There's just so much to like about that team. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they are not the sexiest team in the league by any standards, but they play good, sound defense. They do not get the most sacks. They do not get the most turnovers, but they make stops when it matters, and they play sound defensive football from start to finish. Since their loss in week 1 to running 9 straight victories all the way to the playoffs, this team deserves the number 1 spot. I can understand, and I hear loudly the argument for Birmingham at number 1. Do not get me wrong. I also understand that the Stallions beat the Generals in week number 1. Trust me, I get that. But it's been a long 10 weeks, or long 9 weeks, I guess, since then, technically, so to speak. It'll be interesting to see how things shake out if we get the Generals and the Stallions, both 9-1 teams, going head-to-head in that final for the playoffs there. That would definitely be a fun one to watch. I'm obviously rooting for the Breakers to maybe get an upset in the South Division, but we'll have to see how things shake out. But I have a hard time arguing for the Generals not being in the number 1 spot. But that is my power rankings for the end of the regular season. I'm not sure if I'm going to do postseason power rankings. I didn't do it for the NFL. I think I've always thought it's kind of silly to do postseason power rankings, because all you're really doing is just looking at who's won and lost and kind of plugging them in as you go. I might not. I'll kind of weigh the idea. Let me know in the comment section down below. Would you guys like to see power rankings for the postseason? If you've made it this far to the video, let me know. But I appreciate you guys for watching, as I always do. I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.